Hello students, as we already know, according to the board exam pattern, section B consists of grammar and writing. There are 5 questions in section B. Out of all the 5 questions, story writing carries the maximum marks. So in this section we will learn how to write a story. To write a good story, we should consider the following 3 points. The first is good imagination. For our imagination to be good, we should think something different. Whenever we find a common topic, we should be able to think differently so that our story is different from that of the others. The story should be direct and brief. That means it should be small and it should be written directly so that it is easy to understand. The third point, easily understandable grammatical structure. While writing a story in your question paper, make sure that you write easy sentences, easy small short sentences which are easy to understand, and also they will have less mistakes, so they'll minimize your possibility of getting your marks cut. Now our story should have these following key elements. The first key element is character. The characters can be main character, side character, or supporting character. Then we have setting. Setting is the place or the environment about which we are talking in our story. The setting should be brief, that is small. It can be poetic, that means it should have lots of adjectives, and it should be descriptive. The third point is plot, which is the story. It should be simple and interesting. The fourth and the most important thing is our story should have a conflict. Conflict means problem or questions. Whenever our story has a problem or a question, the reader will read it forward to find the answer. So the problem here should be intense and serious, but we should limit ourselves to only one problem so that the story remains direct, simple, and short, and also easy to understand. The fifth point is theme. The theme should be related to the majority of readers. That means here the reader of our story will be the examiner. So we should write such a story that the examiner will be able to understand it properly and it will be suitable for the examiner. Let us discuss all the key elements one by one. The first key element is the character of the story. Now our story can have either living character or a dead character. The character can also be a ghost, a robot, a dog, a toy, or you can think of any different character which is different than the simple normal characters which all the stories have. Don't forget to use adjectives to describe your characters. The second key element is setting. Now select a time frame for your story. Time frame means first decide if your story will continue for the time period of over the years, or will your story end in a couple of months, or will your story be a scene from say 2-3 hours, or whether it will be of one day. So first select the time frame, that in what time frame your story will be based. Then select a place or places like supermarket, crowded train, or select time like evening, morning, afternoon. Describe the surroundings well. The places which you have selected here, describe them well. You can include some other natural factors like rainfall, storm, stormy night, etc. These details will make the setting of your story interesting. The third key element is the plot, that means the story. It is the flesh and muscle of the story. Now, flesh and muscle of a human being makes the human being strong. Now, here, if the plot is strong, our story will appear strong. So our story must have events and actions of characters. Now the characters which we have selected, the main characters or the side characters or the supporting characters, they should be involved in the stories and the actions which we write. The plot must be logically connected to the events and characters. The plot must be logical. The plot must have a start, a body, and an end, and they should be connected in sequence. Now, whenever we start writing, we should have a clear idea in our mind about the start, body, and end. Most of the times, what happens is when we start writing the story, suddenly we make scenarios about the end of the story and we start writing the end. Then we get some really good ideas about the starting of the story, so we again start writing the starting of the story. While writing the starting, we again get some ideas, some novel, innovative ideas about the ending of the story, and we start writing the ending of the story. Now, this should not be haphazard. These three things should always be in sequence. Choose a start that gets your reader's attention. Now, the reader is always going to read the first few lines of your story first. If those first few lines are interesting, only then they are going to read the rest of the story. If the starting is boring, nobody will read the rest of the story. So make sure that your starting is catchy and interesting. Your plot can have flashbacks, mystery, or you can also give your story a turning point to make it more interesting. The fourth point is the conflict or the problem or the question. Create a problem that will interest your readers and solve the problem creatively. You can give a twist to your story at the end. Now there is this phrase called as twist in the tale. Now there was a very famous short story writer who was called as O. Henry. He was very famous and he still is very famous because of his short stories. Whenever he used to write short stories, he used to give the tale of the story a very different twist. That's why such kind of stories are known as twist in the tale of the story. Then the theme. The theme is the central idea or the main belief of the story. Your theme can either be fiction. Fiction is an imaginary story. It can either be fantasy. Now, fantasy is an imaginary story which is not real, which is not realistic. It involves magic and other factors which actually don't happen in real life. You can write a sad story, you can write a moral story, you can write a horror story, you can write a sci-fi story. Sci-fi story means science fiction story, something imaginary, but it is about science. That is called as science fiction story. You can also write something uh, based on the funnier side. You can write humorous or comical stories as well. These are some important tips while writing your story. Involve fewer characters. That means try to limit the number of your characters. If the number of your characters is less, it will be easy to understand the story well. Develop the characters for theme. Describe characters suitably that matches with the theme. Now, if you select a horror theme and if you start describing your characters and the description is more on the moral theme, then your characters will not match with the theme. So make sure that your characters, the description of your character matches with the theme. Vivid surroundings. That means try to involve a number of surrounding, a variety of surroundings. Vivid means variety, so you can include different surroundings as your story moves forward. Try to make the first line catchy. Catchy means interesting, something which draws your attention so the reader will be interested to read. Write a suitable title. Write only one conflict, that means only one problem. Focus on the theme, don't switch between themes, focus on only one theme. break rules if needed. Now we have studied these many rules. There are some more rules as well. If you think your story will be interesting, if you break all these rules, that's totally fine. You can also introduce interesting dialogues. If you don't want to write the story in forms of paragraphs, you can also introduce some dialogue, some conversation between your characters. Now this was all about story writing.